til jer, og velkommen til Dick Griffin fra New York. Dick har lovet den her gang at bruge tid på at fortælle lidt om sin opvækst, og hvordan han kom ind i musik, og hans karriere, siden han flyttede til New York fra Mississippi, hvor han er født og opvokset omkring 1940. Og det er en lang rejse, og vi er så heldige, at Dick har en fantastisk hukommelse, og han er også god til at fortælle. Så vi kan godt læne os tilbage og så nyde den her tur, vi kommer ud på. Hvis nogen har spørgsmål, så tror jeg, vi tager dem i en pause, eller tager dem, når Dick er et stykke henne. Der er sikkert nok nogen, der skulle have et eller andet, der også spørger ind til. Så Dick, welcome, and we're pleasure to have you here again, and we're looking forward to hear what you have to tell us about your life and your career.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. I will give you a chronological walk through my life. In the projector, oh wow, on the projector you see now is my mother at 18 years old. And she lived in Fannin, Mississippi. And that's about 18 miles from Jackson, Mississippi. My mother's 18, so I was born when she was about 20 or 21. And she was born December 11, 1918. So do your math. This was before I was born. And I was born in 1940 in Fannin, Mississippi. And I want to see, I can show you a photo of me when I was 1 year old. That's the 1 year old Dick Griffin. And with puffy cheeks and that was me in Fannin, Mississippi, 1 year old. My biological mother and father never married. My stepfather married my mother when I was about that age, a year old. And this noise, this is my kind of, okay, I got it. But yeah, that's what's moving. So at the time I was, I didn't know that my stepfather, his name was Otha Obana, and I was a year old, they got married. I'll tell you the sequence. I was born in January 28, 1940. My mother told my biological father that she wasn't going to marry him because he didn't believe that, he had to wait to see if I was his child. And I was, and she said no. And he married Fannie Mae, his wife until he passed away in August. And my mother married Otha in February. So Otha Obana was my father until I was 7 years old, until he had a car accident and they hit something. He came over the back seat and broke his neck, and he died. And my mother was pregnant with my youngest sister at the time. And I can see her now because I have a visual thing about a particular incident in a maternity suit at my my stepfather's funeral. It was 1947, and I would definitely remember that year and that time because that was the year that Jackie Robinson integrated baseball, 1947. I was 7 years old in the second grade. Okay. Prior to that, I got started in music at 3 years old, maybe as young as when I could walk and go to church. And I would sing in the gospel, in the choir, and do little, we had plays. We would do Easter plays, and we would act out, different stories and biblical stories. And I was around 3 years old, so we're talking 1940. 41 was this picture. 1942 was beginning kind of to be aware of music and become a musician. Then 43, I was starting to participate in musical things in the church. But there was a neighbor of mine named Mr. Jesse. And Mr. Jesse, he worked for the city. And back in that day, we're talking 1942, 1943, in that early years of the 40s, they didn't have sophisticated sewage systems and everything. So each street had a trench on the side for the rain to drain off. We call them ditches. And Mr. Jesse used to dig ditches for a living. That's what he did, maintain the ditches. And the street, I lived in this neighborhood called Under the Hill. The street was we called gravel. Gravel was these large rocks about that size that was on mud, regular dirt, and they were spread it out over the streets, and they called those gravel roads. But on each side of the street was a trench, and they called that a ditch. That's what Mr. Jesse used to do for a living. But every day, Monday through Friday, when he finished his job, he came home with overalls full of mud. He would, take off his overalls and clean up, take his bath or whatever, take his guitar, and all the kids in the neighborhood would gather around, and he would give us a concert every day, singing the blues. And he was the first guy that I heard that did something similar to rap. And he would tell you what happened on his job that day in a song. And one day it was a lady in our neighborhood with high heel shoes on, coming around the corner, and on those gravel roads, she slipped and almost fell. And he put that in his song. And that, oh man, I just was so amazed by how quick he was and how he could, what we call freestyle rap is now. But that whole freestyle rap came from Africa. They were doing that in Africa early on. That's where that whole thing came from. So, 1995 and 96, I was just getting ready to go to school. And my friends, at the time, it was my friend, my cousin, he used to beat me up. When I say beat me up, we would play marbles and he would bully me, And one day my stepfather said, my name is Jane Richard. Jane Richard, if you don't beat him, I'm going to beat you. I was going to get 2 beatings. And that day, my cousin, we were wrestling, he was on top of me, and I got his big finger in my mouth, and I nearly bit it off. And he went home yelling. He lived all the way up on the top of the hill. He never stopped crying and yelling and from that day on, he never messed with me or never tried to intimidate me. And I didn't get the whooping from my stepfather, Otham, we call him Mr. O'Banner. And that era in that time, we're talking before I came to school, started school, in the South, every adult was addressed as Mr. And we said yes, sir, and no, sir, to every adult, regardless of what race or what if you were a grown person and the children, you were a child or a grown person. And the children didn't mix with the grown people. And the grown people respect the children. So the place that I lived in Jackson, Mississippi was called Under the Hill. The reason for the Under the Hill description was that at the top of the hill was where the city was kind of level. But when you went under the hill, you went down the hill and walked all the way to the Pearl River. So, and in that river, the water would rise in the spring. And it would call high water. So the house that I live in, all the houses were built up on stilts about that high. And as a kid, we could play. We used to play under the house when it rained. And another experience that is rare and very few people know what it's about is having a tin-top roof, living in a house with a tin-top roof. Have anyone lived in a house or no? Okay. That was, and Oprah Winfrey mentioned that. That's such a special time because you could hear the raindrops as they start. It was musical to me, and it was like it starts slow and then dun, 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 and then it accelerate. Then you know it's raining hard. Then when it stopped raining, you could hear it slowly stop, and you know where they. And as kids, we wanted to go out to play, but the key that we had to play. We had under the house, so we always would. When it rained, we kept playing because we would go under the house and play. So that was something that under the hill, the smell of the rain on this dirt had a certain kind of smell. And after the rain, it was the musical thing, the crickets. It was a very eerie sound. And I used to get kind of sad when I heard the cricket sound after the rain. And I don't know why, it was kind of a sad, eerie sound. So now, that takes me to 1946. By that time in 1946, just before when I started to school, there's an interesting thing happened to my life. My stepfather's name was Otha O'Banner, and my mother was referred to as Miss O'Banner, and I thought they used to call me James O'Banner. But because my biological father and mother had never married, I thought my name was James O'Banner. So I went to school in the first grade, and I had to take my birth certificate in. My birth certificate read as James Richard Griffith, Griffis. So the teacher and I decided, I never heard of a Griffith, so maybe you're a Griffin. And back in those days, the midwife who wrote out my birth certificate didn't probably know how to spell Griffith. It was Griffith. And so I thought, I said, well, yeah, she put down Griffin. To the day, I am not connected with my biological, that all of my cousins and everything, they're Griffith. So anyway, that was the way I got the name Griffin, and we got to the first grade school. And it was I loved school, at that time I was 6 years old, 1946. Having a great time. My name, it didn't matter. I didn't know, the teachers just, okay, Griffin. Then everything was going very good, My daddy, I didn't know that he was not my biological dad. Then in the summer of 1947, he and his brothers were driving up to Greenwood, Mississippi, and they hit something, a bump or something, and he was a short guy. And my mother was taller than him. He was a fair complexion guy, and my mother was taller than him. But he broke his neck and died in July in a car accident. And it was just a horrible thing, because like I say, my mother was a single parent with an unborn child, and her husband had just gotten killed in a car accident. So that was 1947, as I said. She made the adjustment. My youngest sister was born. Then I went on to the, grades, fourth grade, that was 48, 49. And then let me take you back to the first grade in school. There was a friend of mine, he's now deceased, he was a great drummer, Freddie Wakes. We were in the first grade together, and our teacher was Miss Castley. And I remember there was a lady in the first grade named Patricia Campbell, and we just had a great time in school, and he was first grade. So we went first grade, second grade was 47, 48, third grade, and we went through that system, and I started to really gravitate. Now, I'm 7 years old. By the time I was 11 years old, the friend of mine, his name was Herbert Delaney. My stepfather had gotten killed, and we lived in the segregated South was all black neighborhoods and all white neighborhoods. There were never any kind of mixture of neighborhood. But under the hill was all black. But to go to the elementary school we had to go through a white neighborhood. And we never walked through the white neighborhood solo, because we would get harassed or, but my friend Herbert, he was bigger than me, so we walked together to school and back. So one day he had a piano in his house. One day Herbert Delaney said, "Listen, you got to go with me. We got to go have this piano lesson." with Miss Betty Marino. And I was 11 years old. That put me in what grade? Second grade was I was 7. The third grade 8. Fourth grade 9. Fifth grade 10, right? Sixth grade 11. I was in the 6th grade, 11 years old, and he took his piano lesson. The minute I heard that and heard the piano lesson, I said, Miss, next time, I think it was 25 cents or something very. Next time I had my money and I started taking piano, and that's when I fell in love with. Before that, to actually play music, and he had a piano. So I took piano for a whole year with Miss Betty Marino. She had me going through the John Thompson books, and she died after 1 year of my studying with her. And I never stopped playing the piano. I was in love with the piano, and I think at that point I decided that I was going to be a musician. I mean, I just loved it, and I'm going to go over to the piano and play something that I used to play. And I'm going to invite, maybe you can come up. Yeah, okay. I used to play this. Where are you? Okay, here, on this side. Normally it would be a bench, and the young lady would be sitting next to me, and that was the way I got to flirt with the young ladies. But I want, with one finger, just play any of these white notes, any note. So that was my first introduction. You can have a seat now. Introduction to really, really loving the piano and getting the chance to flirt with the young ladies. So I wasn't a great guy when I say at that young age, because there were not many choices under the hill. Under the hill, people they would call it corn whiskey. And people shot dice. That was the activity for kids. We shoot dice. I didn't drink because I knew my mother would probably beat me or punish me. But the guys would find out where the people hid their whiskey, because everybody had to hide their whiskey, and it was a dry state, so it was kind of illegal to even have liquor of that sort. And they would hide it, but the kids, me and my friends, those that did it, they would find out where the guys would hide it, and they would steal 1 pint, and everything came, and they would drink or whatever if they had to do, or sell it or whatever. So I was hanging out with that group, but I went to church every Sunday, and I developed a nickname as Schoolboy, because most of the kids dropped out of school. There was a place called Robert Stockett Barn, And there was a movie made called The Help. I don't know if some people have seen it. It's American. But it was all about people that did this type of work that my mother did. Was a maid. We call them maids. And some people call them now domestic workers. That was the name. So my mother never remarried. I was the oldest in the family. So I had to take care of my 3 sisters until my mother came back, from work. But I wasn't I was pretty smart in that my mother made sure that she had the food and everything I could warm and feed my sisters and everything. But I had to clean the house and had to have there was a practice. You always washed every dish in the kitchen, and the kitchen stayed clean at all times. If you went in the kitchen and it was clean, then you wouldn't leave the kitchen until it was the same way you went in. My mother was a stickler for being clean. Like, she wanted me to dust every day, and if she come in, she's like a Jill Strider. Jane Richard, you got to do it all over. So she instilled in me to do a good job. I mean, everything. She was like a drill sergeant. Very kind and very funny, but she just required you to do everything at a high level. Whatever you did, if you cleaned something, if you played something, if you built something and stuff. So that theory that she instilled in me and always said, Jane Richard takes just as much time for you to do a good job as it does a lousy job. Because if you did a lousy job, you have to do it over, so that's going to be the added time plus, So I always tried to do it right. The thing that my mother had, and I had, she was such a smart person, and a lot of the kids thought that they were getting over. Their mother didn't know, what was going on. The day that I hadn't washed the dishes, I would put them in the oven. So she walk in, kitchen's clean, bang. She knew that I hadn't washed the dishes, but she would go out on the porch and sit and talk to Miss Katie while I would run in the kitchen and wash the dishes and everything. And she just knew that, and then I'd wash the dishes and put them away because I'm stuck. I put them in the oven, while she'd walk in the kitchen. The kitchen looks great, All the dishes are washed, bang, but they would be in the oven, so I would wash them and put them away. And then she knew by the time I had cleaned up and did everything, I'd come out to do. Then she would go back in the house and have a regular routine day. So, but I did something that I'm not proud of, but I got involved in no, I didn't steal, because she taught me the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not, do a lot of things. Honor the mother and father, that the days would be along on earth. But I wasn't a goody two guy. I mean, I was, a little smart guy. So we got involved in a crooked dice trio. So we would roll the guys for their money that worked all week with the crooked dice. And the way we did it, it would be 2 guys. And the dealer would cup the dice in his bottom pinky finger. So he'd pick up the dice, he would put the crooked dice here and throw out the regular dice. But when he wanted to get the crooked dice out, which one is going to have 7 and 11, you're going to win, he would just throw them out that way, and then we would win money, a lot of money. And I'm not proud of it, but I was guilty of doing that. And one day, this guy, Willie C., lived on my street. He had a wife and 2 kids. And he would work all week and, lose portion of his money and stuff. And my heart said I couldn't do it anymore. I just didn't have that in my heart. But the funniest thing, these guys, they had nicknames. Johnny Sharp and Willie C., Geechee, and Monk Dunk, and oh man, all these guys, the slick guys. I would be in my Sunday best, church, and I passed by them, in the morning, going to church with their money in my pocket that I don't want from them, And they had a nickname for me as Schoolboy. So that was it. And then I'm about 14 years old now. And my mother got a notice from the truant officer that I had been out of school for 10 days. I had shot hookah. And she came in, to the school, because when you're out that time, I was hanging out with these guys. We did a lot of little things, but nothing, no weapons or anything, no confrontation, and I didn't steal, I didn't have it in me to do all that. So she, Miss Ethel, the lady who owned the cafe where B.B. King, Muddy Waters, Elmo James, all these blues artists, we call it the cafe, would play every weekend, Friday and Saturday at this place in my neighborhood. And they weren't stars at that time. They were just local people. But that's why I got a chance to hear Mr. Jesse playing the blues every day on the week. And then on the weekend, there was a guy named Mammy Gray. He played the piano, boogie-woogie piano. And people would just dance to only the piano player. There wouldn't be any drums or no guitars or anything. But then, like I said, I got to be very familiar with B.B. King from a long time, and we stayed friends. And B.B. was a very, very, I can say, warm and personal guy. If you ever got to meet him, he was so nice and so generous. He gave you the Southern hospitality, Southern treat, very warm, very. But so that was it, and so Miss Ethel told my mother. She said, Ruby, that was my mother's name. Ruby, Jane Richards is down there gambling with those guys, and everything. So, but I was always smart enough to know when my mother was coming, I'd be home, boom, right there, Mama, yeah, and Mama, she come in and inspect everything. But while she wasn't at work and everything, I would go out and I'd be gambling. I was good at it, shooting the dice. But my mother never said anything to me about that. After she saw me once, she said, yes, and Ethel told me that I was down there, but I saw Jane Richard once. And then she said, that is the time I decided to move from under the hill. I didn't know anything was going on. She never said a word to me about gambling or anything. Then when we moved from under the hill, we moved to a neighborhood called Georgetown. And in that Georgetown, they had developed a whole street of new houses. Before then, we were living in what we call a shotgun house. A shotgun house was like this, apartment one, a house, apartment there, and apartment there. And most of the shotgun houses, you could look through one door and look all the way through to the back door. That's why they call it a shotgun house. But our house, we had a door here, and then had a door to the left, and then a door to the right. And to describe that house we lived in under the hill, there was a hydrant, we called it. There was only hydrant or running water out on the back porch. We didn't have anything like faucets and everything. So then we took a bath in a tin tub, and we had to heat the water and take a bath in the tin tub. But there was only one running water hydrant coming into the whole apartment. So, I had experienced some really tough experiences while I was under the hill, and I have to tell one that stands out. When I was about 12 or 13, there was a guy who died at our doorstep, and he bled, a big puddle of blood about this size. And what happened in our neighborhood, people get drunk. They didn't do drugs or anything. They would get drunk, and they would fight and do all kinds of stuff. So this guy, there was a path that come, and maybe the house was here, and over here was a path that goes over to the next street. I lived on Seville Street, and Lucerne was the next street. And he decided to come in our backyard, go through our house to get to, and he fell at our doorstep because he was stabbed. Somebody had stabbed him in the side, and he bled to death. But there was a big puddle of blood at the bottom of our doorstep, and every time it rained, I don't care how much rain, that puddle of blood would come up. We dug it up. There's something about that, and that was at our doorstep. And every time it rained, the same puddle of blood would come up. And also another thing, we had outhouses. If anybody don't know, under the hill we had, instead of indoor toilets, because there was only one faucet with water running, we had outhouses. And in school, they had indoor toilets, and if I got up on the top of the hill, from under the hill, there was a Cicero book, and it was just everything was just modern with indoor toilets and everything. But we lived in this poor neighborhood under the hill, and they had outhouses. And that was up until I was, about 15 or 14 when I moved from under the hill. The other thing about under the hill, in our backyard, across from right where the toilet was, there was a field, and they planted cotton in that area, small area of cotton. And sometimes they would have corn there. But it was like maybe how can I say it, an acre of land or something that they farmed there. The other thing about living under the hill, that there used to be a cotton truck, because we were in the city, would come and take us out to the farm. And as a kid, I had this crush on this young lady, and I would get on the truck because I just wanted to be around her and everything. But I couldn't pick cotton. I wasn't skilled at that. I was a kid, so they would pay you $3 a day, I think, just to chop the cotton. So I wasn't good at the chopping the cotton. So the guy said, and I couldn't pick any cotton because I picked enough just to get my sack full enough to lay under the tree and until the day is over. You know, but you had to weigh. They paid you by the poundage of the cotton you picked. But I would be on that truck every day because I liked this young lady, and so after a while they said, okay, you can't pick and you can't chop. We're going to make you the water boy. So I would. I was the water boy, you know, the other people working, and I would go up to get the water. Ice cold water is hot down there, you know, and they would be where's the water boy? And I'm cheating. I'm just sitting down and say shade, and every time that I was not good at any of that. So, but that was the way it worked, and that was Under the Hill. I'll show you the difference between that. There's a lot of fights, and the guy got killed, and we going to 1950, like 50, 51. And then I was going to the high school. After I finished elementary school, 6th grade, that was 11, right? So now we go into the period between 12, 13. That's where I was really messing up. 1951, 52, 53. Now we get to 53, we're out and going to the junior high school. And I'm in the 7th grade now. And at that time, that's when my mother discovered that I was, like being truant. So my friend Freddie Wakes, we were in the first grade together and up into the same grade. So my mother cried. The reason I didn't get a punishment or anything, she just said to me, Jane Richard, how can you do this to me? And every time I tell it, I really feel kind of, it's coming back. I get teared up and everything. So now you tell me how long I got to talk, because I got a long story. I'm just at the teenage stage, but you let me give me the signal when it's time to come. So anyway, my mother cried, and that was the turning point. I came to school the next day, and my friend Freddie Wakes was in the classroom. We had homerooms. That was the first time you could just go from class to class without the teacher lining you up and carrying you to it. You were kind of a little bit independent. First time you got out of the 6th grade where you had to be in line in every group and everything. So Freddie was playing these on the book. He had a drumstick. I said, Freddie, you in the band? He said, yes. I didn't say anything else. I turned around at that point and went straight to Mr. Holly, the band director. And I said, Mr. Holly, I want to be in the band, and I want to play the trumpet. He said, well, son, I got enough trumpets, but if you want to play the trombone, you can take it home today. I said, give it to me. And that was the turning point in my life, from being on the rough side of the law and all of that. And he set me down and gave me instructions, told me where the position was, and he put it in the case, and I was able to walk home through my neighborhood with the trombone. And I never looked back. And after that, I knew then and there I wanted to be a musician. That's where I wanted to make my living. So I got in the band, and I was in the marching band, had a uniform, and we would travel over to the cities and everything. And there was a guy named, some of you rap people might know, Nas. His father's name Olu Dara, but his really name was Charles Jones. So when we were in high school, I was about 15. This week going from 1954 to 1955, right? So that's chronologically going up. I'm 15 years old. I've been in the band. I was in the choir as well because I had a good voice. And I used to sing in doo-wop groups. We had groups of 4 people, like the Four Tops or the Temptation had 5, but we were in that doo-wop group. So I started to make money because the group that I was in, we would win the talent show. And the grand prize for the talent show was $10. So splitting up $10 among 4 people was $250 a week because we win every week. So that was a lot of money. I didn't have to do, I did prior to that deliver papers, I shined shoes, I did all kinds of stuff to make money. But just to sing and make that $250 a week, there was no question about what I was going to do and it was it. Then, as I said, I would play the piano, and the young lady was sitting next to me, and I was so, happy to do that, charming, and we go. Now we at 15. I started to form a band. It's called Hammerhead and Its Nails. I have a photo of this. I should have projected that one. And that was about 56. I really got started, and the group was doing very well. 1957, we were doing the talent show and winning. I'm 17 years old, and the grand prize was to open the show for Sam Cooke, and we won that. I'm 17 years old, 1957, College Park Auditorium. One of the parents made uniforms. They had some red and white top shirts, like with ruffles and everything on. We had black pants, and we had all the steps and everything. And we did that before Sam came out. He did his show. Then after the end of the show, Sam called us in the dressing room. Hey, guys, come on in. And so you guys are really good. So would you like to become a member of the Sam Cooke Review? That means that we would get paid, and we'd be like the stars and everything. And everybody was saying yes. We jumped up and kicked our heels together, and my parents, all of them said no. So that brought me to 17 years old, and boy, I was, popular, making money, and I had the band. So when I had the band in high school, I was playing and singing. Do I have to do anything? Okay. Oh yeah, this. I carry this with me. So I was doing stuff like, darling, you send me, darling, you send me. I know that you send me. Honest you do, honest you do, honest you do. So we did. I used to do that kind of stuff, and we would do it as a group, and so we're getting very popular, and we had won the test, the talent show test. Now we're talking 1958. I'm graduating from high school, and I didn't. My mother was independent, a single parent. At that time, my mother didn't have to pay anything for me in any way. I mean, she couldn't afford to, raising 4 kids and working as a domestic worker, But I was always good, and I was good at managing money. I was tight with my money. I didn't buy a annual. I didn't go to the prom. I didn't do a lot of things because I didn't want to spend money in a certain way. And I'll tell you about the prom situation. I had this crush on this girl named Thelma. And Thelma went to the prom with a guy named Johnny. And if I couldn't go to the prom with her, I didn't want to do the prom. So that was that. And the yearbook, well, I didn't want to spend money for that either. So we in 58 and graduate from high school. I'm thinking I'm missing thing, but in high school, we used to play proms. You know, that's for the dance where everybody dressed up in their costumes and the whole thing and the tuxedo and all that. Well, but we would play for the white schools. And there was a guy in our band that in the South, or we call them high yellow elite, these were black people that looked a block away, looked like they were white. And we had a family, the Herron family. And that even go deep into Medgar Evers and my friends, and I can tell you a little bit more because I don't want to talk, but Booty, we call him, this guy, Robert Herron, he played the baritone sax. And we were playing at this white high school, junior high school, and he was playing his part where he was boom, 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 and he played the baritone. That was our bass part. And this young white girl came up and started doing her exotic dance in front of him. And his nose started to bleed. But he never, I guess his pressure went up so high, he never stopped playing his note. And we had white shirts and black, so, but we always met. His blood was running down on his shirt. He never stopped playing it, boom, boom, boom. But he got so excited. This girl thought he was white, but he wasn't. And so we always joke Booty about that. And we see if anything else exciting happened. Oh, I was telling you about Olu. Olu Dara was not Nas' father. We would do exchange concerts in high school. One year we went to Natchez on the Friday, did a concert, and they put us up, parents would put us up, and then we would come back on the Saturday. And then next year, Natchez would come to my high school, the near high school, and they would do a concert, and then they would come. So we call them exchange concert. And that's when I met Olu Dara, who was Nas' father, and we became friends. And she's still my friend now up to the date. But that was something that was done in high school. So getting out of high school, I was so convinced that I was going to get a scholarship to Jackson State because I was playing the trombone pretty well, and I was singing. So I auditioned in both, and that was a big mistake. I auditioned as a vocalist and a trombonist. The head of the music department was a choir director. So he didn't like the idea of you auditioning for both. Either you wanted to be a singer or you wanted to be an instrumentalist. I didn't know that. So I didn't get the scholarship. So I'm disappointed. Oh, man. And my friend Herbert Delaney, the same guy used to walk me through the neighborhoods, and he came home. He was in the Air Force. He said, "What you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to get married." I said, "What?" Yeah, I said, "Who you going to marry?" "I'm going to marry Thelma," this one girl, lady that I had to crush on. So he said, "Okay, that sounds good. Does she know about it?" I said, "Yeah, no, she doesn't know about it." He said, "Well, I think you should be in. She should be in on this one, And then we had a big laugh. So at that same time, I didn't have the scholarship. It was June. I'm very, very clear. I didn't have the scholarship. Didn't know what I was going to do, because I couldn't afford to pay the tuition to go to Jackson State. There was a postcard that came in the mail, And we out on the front porch in the jack, and the postman usually just passed the mail to you because it was 3-handed mail, and there was a card that's from Utica Junior College that said tuition free. All you had to pay was $10 a semester. And at that time, I was making pretty decent money singing and playing, and that was. And he said, "This is what you're going to do," and that's what I did. I went to Utica Junior College. It was the best thing that I could have done. Sometimes a lot of people say some rejections are really opportunities for something better or something to go. By me going to Utica Junior College, I went, and the band director's name was Mr. Lee, Mr. Lewis Lee. And he lived in Jackson. And he drove down, and back and forth. And Utica was the interesting place because it was in the south. It was 30 miles from Jackson. But the bus would pick us up right at the corner of Linear Avenue where I lived, right at the corner at 7 o'clock. And we'd go down and be in the college and campus and everything, drive us back, and we'd be back in Jackson by 5, like clockwork, Monday through Friday. But when I went to Utica, Mr. Lee, the band director, he taught me to change my embouchure on my trombone, and he knew that I could play the piano and sing, so he got me a job in a white nightclub playing 4 nights a week for $10 a night. I did that for 5 years. I was making more money doing that than my uncle who worked for the city. And I wouldn't have, had I not gone to Utica and I had got a job in Jackson State, I wouldn't have, I got a scholarship in Jackson State, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So that was right into 1959. After that, 58, 59. Now, I didn't go to Chicago in 58 for a reason I don't even need to have to explain. But in 1959, the summer of 59, my first trip to Chicago, that was the first time that I had passed the Mason-Dixon line. And I didn't see a sign that said color, white, I could sit next to a white lady or man or thing and not feel intimidated. It wasn't even allowed in the South. You would never sit next to somebody. And the bus situation, let me tell you, this is a funny one. In high school, when we would ride the bus, they had this sign, colored white up here, colored there, and the sign moved, slide up and slide down, right? So a bunch of us, high school kids, would get on the bus and push the sign all the way to the front. So there would be 3 seats for the white people to sit. And the bus driver, but we would do it while the driver is driving, right? Now he gonna stop the bus and, frustrated and yell and push it back. And so he'd get tired of that, so he just have to, he'd have to drive the bus or either keep moving the sign. So we had so much fun with that. And as teenagers, we weren't afraid and all that, intimidated, and we had a lot of fun with it. But that was one thing we used to do. And with that sign, push that sign all the way up and sit all the seats there, and then he come there. And we had to come in on the side. We would pay our fee, I think, up at front, and then we'd have to go in through the side door because we were in the back of the bus and all that. So we would do all kinds of negative things. We'd go in the front and sit in the front, push the sign all the way back. And he couldn't do anything. He would just either decide to drive the bus or play with, let us keep him, going with the sign. So that was another thing we should do. And so come to 59, my first trip to Chicago, doing the, only being where I could just sit down and go into a restaurant. There was no color, no white water, and the bathroom was colored bathroom, white bathroom, and all that. So when I went there, first time, I actually saw it change while I was on the bus. Up until about the Kentucky and the Indiana area, somewhere in there where you walk in, you get off the bus, you wouldn't see a colored waiting room and a white waiting room. You just go in the waiting room. And so it started happening. That was called the Mason-Dixon line. And mind you, musically, I had been playing in my band and started to play piano and sing with Mr. Lewis Lee. And I went to Chicago thinking I was going to be playing piano, And so I got there, and the first thing my cousin did, he took me down to the Loop to a burlesque show. So I could see a naked white woman dancing and not have any kind of restrictions or nothing. So that was my washing me out of the segregated mindset into the integrated set. And believe it or not, every time I went to my ritual, the first thing I did when I went to Chicago was go down to the Loop and go to the burlesque show. And I did it for routinely, just to okay, bang, my mind, I'm good. I'm in Chicago. Now, I'm in Chicago, 1959, 19 years old. Pretty well known, had played a lot. So I had my first aunt, was Aunt Camille. Aunt Camille was very strict. When I say strict, she would say, "Oh, you had a curfew. You got to be in after dark. You little boy from Mississippi. You country. Chicago's a rough place and everything." So, but I would just walk the neighborhood, walk all around South Side. So one day I was walking and I heard live music. And wow, it was in the Persian Lounge. So I walk in, there was Marsha Allen, John Gilmore, Pat Patrick, Ronnie Borkins, and Sun Ra. And they were rehearsing. They were playing this real hip music and jazz and everything. So I went over and I sit there and I said, I played the trombone. He said, "Come, bring it tomorrow. You come rehearse with us." That was it. Wasn't no whole big thing or auditioning and everything. So then that's when I first really, really got into playing the trombone professionally. Otherwise, I was playing piano and singing in Mississippi. So then it was just like, oh man. And we rehearsed all day from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. and take a break, and if we had a gig, we would, play, because at the end in the Persian Ballroom. So that's 59. I was 19 years old. 60, and that was a nightclub that called McKee's Fitzgerald Lounge. That's when I first heard, Coltrane was there. I heard Johnny Griffin. I heard Gene Ammons. I heard Sonny Stitt. I heard Illinois Jacket, because the drummer, Al Foster, who just passed not too long ago, he was with Illinois Jacket's band, and I was always conscious of just aware of what people were wearing, because I could picture it in my head. And he was 19 years old, and that's about right, because I was 21 about that time. And he was married, and he had maybe one or two daughters. and he was playing with Illinois Jack, and I thought that was so unique. And I told him, when I see him, I told him what pinstripe double-breast suit he had on, and that was just a turn of my life when I got to meet Sun Ra. Then I saw Coltrane in '61 when he just played only soprano. So I was 21 about that time, 1961, 1959. I was 21, so heard Coltrane playing just soprano. That's when I met McCoy Tyner, and a bass player from Jackson, Mississippi, Reginald Willis. He was a great bass player. He is still with us, and he invited McCoy Tyner over to his house for lunch, and that's when I met McCoy, and we became friends until he passed away. I recorded twice with McCoy. I'm on his record, Song for the New World and Inner Voices. So those two albums I recorded with McCoy. But McCoy and I stayed friends, and up until his death. And it was just the Chicago trip was just it was just bringing me into where I wanted to be musically. I met Muhal Richard Abrams during that time before they established the AACM. I met Eddie Harris. He was playing piano and singing and playing, and then that Chicago was thriving with great musicians. Mind you, I didn't meet Clifford Jordan, but I had met John Gilmore, and they were very close. All the Chicago tenor players were very, very close. They knew each other. Johnny Griffin, and there was a guy named Johnny Boyd, and and Tom Archett. Tom Archie was a tenor player from Texas, but I played piano with Tom Archett. Also did Jack DeJohnette. We had that in common. Jack DeJohnette is a great piano player. So we both played with Tom Archett, at that time. Because Tom Archett would go in, like in Chicago, and say, man, I got a gig tonight. I need a piano player. Okay. So I would play piano, and sometimes if Jack or somebody, he got a gig, they put together, you play with Tom Archett. Great saxophone player, there was so many good saxophone players. Now, Von Freeman, I met him during that time. And that's Chico Freeman's father and everything, a great tenor player. And he had these sessions, he had the jam sessions. And then when I came back to Chicago with Rossan and Roland Kirk, they would just get together and they would play all night. Rossan would come there and about 4 o'clock, and they would play till 8 in the morning. When you come out of the club, it would be daylight. They really throw down. So now we got it. 59, 60, 61, it was there in Chicago. 62, still each time I'm still playing with Sun Ra and everybody. And I did it only during the summer because I was going to school at Jackson State after I went to school 2 years at Utica Junior College. Mr. Lewis Lee, trained me very well to write music as well. So now we get into 63. And another thing was facing me was the draft, because you had to be either get a deferment or be drafted into the Army. So then that time, by me going to college and going to school, I had got a deferment from the Army. But when I graduated in 1963, I'm talking 62, 1963, I went to Chicago and I had my teacher's license, I had finished my bachelor's, and I was going to be substitute teaching. Then my mother called me and said, Jane Richard, the lady from the draft board said you got to get in touch with her. Okay, I called. The lady said from the draft board, I said, I'm teaching, I got everything. She said, you can do that. We can get a deferment, but you have to do it in Mississippi. Whoa, okay. It was October. School started in August. Jumped on whatever I could, got down there. And I remember Columbus, B-U-S, was a nice sized city, I thought. But they had an opening in Columbia, you know. Back in those days, and people they were like France. They didn't put no emphasis on the last part of a word, you know. So I took a job, you know. I'm glad to do that because I didn't want to go to the service. So I get on the bus thinking I'm going to Columbus. And they took me to Columbus was north of Jackson. Columbia was south. I didn't know the difference. I'm on the bus, and the bus stops, and I'm looking for a bus station or something, and there was a man on the side of the road named Mr. Jefferson. The guy said, "This is your stop." I got off, and there was Mr. Jefferson with some glasses on, with a big smile on. "How you doing, Mr. Griffin?" And I'm the principal of the school that you're going to be teaching. So, wow, that was a shock to me because I thought I was going to. So, to make the long story short, that was in 1963. And I had been in Chicago, so I started to teach at this school. And the school was here, and the place I was staying was right across the street from the school. It was a small, very small town. So, but the neighbors, Walter Payton and his brother, Ed Payton, lived right next door to where I was living. And I was teaching. Ed Payton was 2 years older than Walter Payton, the great football player that made so much records and set so many records. He was about 14 years at that time. You know, he wasn't a full-grown man and all that. And then, I taught him. He was he always had a kind of a high-pitched voice and a very soft-spoken guy. But, boy, I've been going a long time. I'm gonna call it off in a few, but I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna fast forward to a few things. So, I went, went there and I taught, but I had met Rahsaan Roland Kirk at McKee's Fitzgerald Lounge around that time, 62 or 61. So, my relationship with him, and I taught there for 2 years. My first summer in 64 was my first trip to New York City. That time, Rahsaan Roland Kirk was living on Central Park West. He was married to Edith, and his son, Roy, hadn't been born. I think Roy was born in 65. But this was the summer of 64. So that summer, I stayed with Freddie Wakes, my friend from the first grade. Freddie Wakes was with Paul Winter's band, and he had a nice apartment on 96th Street in Riverside. Big apartment, because Paul Winters was very, very wealthy in a sense. So I spent that whole summer, 64, and that's when I saw Coltrane at Birdland. I saw Cannonball at Birdland. I saw Bud Powell at the real Bud Powell. And I saw, Mingus, Charles Mingus. That's when Rahsaan took me down. Mingus was playing at the 5 Spot. Rahsaan took me down to Charles Mingus and introduced me, and Mingus said, "Come on up, I want you to sit in with me." And they played C-Jam Blues. and I soloed the best I could. I wasn't so bad at the time. So then when he entered, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we got this young trombone player, Roland Kirk's cousin. I don't know how he put that together, that I was related to Roland Kirk. And I played. And guess who was in the audience? J.J. Johnson was in the audience. I didn't know he was in the audience, but when he was leaving, he said, "Who's that kid over there?" And that was my idol, J.J. Johnson. And at that time, he was getting ready to move to California. He was going to California. And that summer, I played with Rahsaan Roland Kirk at a church called St. Peter's Church. And there was a guy named John Genzer, Reverend John Genzer had started that. It was called the Jazz Church, and it still goes on to the day. And let me see, that's 64. My first trip to New York, first time playing, oh man, I played with Kenny Durham, Joe Henderson, big band. Cedar Walden had a big band. And this arrangement I wrote for summertime that I had here for the people that were in the workshop, that was the same arrangement that I had written for the 100-piece marching band. And well, I've been going about an hour, right, already? I've been going pretty good.
You need a small break or something?
Well, I can keep going. I want to keep going because so that puts me right into New York and my starting. So now I'm in the musical scene, and we at 64, 65. I got my okay. The first summer that I went to New York, I went to Indiana University because I'm still a part of that draft situation. You had to be in school, you had to do something. So I went to Indiana, I got into the master's program. I had my bachelor's. That was the break between 63, after I graduated, and 64. But 64, I jumped in and I went to graduate school, and I started really in the master's program 65, okay? 65, went to Indiana. I'm studying going to New York. I never looked at Chicago again. Everything was New York. 64, 65, I'm in New York. I met Pharoah Sanders, and I started jamming with all the guys, you know, Archie Shepp. I was in with him. There was a guy named Marzette Watts. Nobody knows him too much, but Marzette Watts was a saxophone player and a painter and an artist. And he lived in the same building that Archie Shepp lived in. And Amir Baraka, Leroy Jones, a great writer, he lived at the top floor of this same building. And his wife was Hetty Jones at that time. His name was, his last name was Jones. Leroy Jones, yeah. What was his last name? Yeah, his last name was Jones, and because Hetty, his wife, they had a child and a daughter, but they all lived in this building. Archie, the building had a change, like a lock, you know, and they had to throw the key down from the window to unlock the lock to come up to the apartment. That was the master lock, and it was a few doors down from CBGB's club on the Bowery. So all of that was very, very connected. And there was a club called Slugs, and Slugs was where I played with Sun Ra every Monday night. As long as he lived in New York, we played at Slugs every Monday night. And then during the week, I would be playing with Rahsaan Roland Kirk from Tuesday through Sunday. On Monday, I would play with Sun Ra at Slugs. And then even on Sunday, Frank Foster had a big band that would play from 2 to 5 on Sunday. So I was in all of those activities. I was doing so much music that I was in heaven, because I played in all of those situations and teaching school. And I got married. So now we in 60, 65, 66, right? 66, I was still in Indiana, and that's when David Baker started to first teach at Indiana University. The first year, it was a guy named Henry Coker, and he taught jazz there. But we would go, Randy Brecker and his, a guy named Jerry Green, we would drive up to Indiana, which was up to Naptown. It was 1 hour drive from Bloomington to study privately with David Baker before he took the position at Indiana University. He started in 66. I was there from 65 to 67. Got my master's degree in 67. So, but I was always going to going to New York on the weekends and sometimes even during the week, because at that time it was only $42 to fly round trip. They had a thing called youth fare, and they served a hot meal on the flight from Indianapolis to New York, $42, and they had a youth fare. It was half fare for anybody that was in college during that time. So then that's when I really got very close to Farrell, and when Farrell was just getting ready or getting locked up with playing with Coltrane, and I was scheduled to actually play with Coltrane, to actually sit in with him or play with him. Farrell had told Coltrane and Alice about me because I was doing the multiphonics. Let me do some of that, just a little bit to give you an idea of what was going on. So that was what I was doing way back then. And then I was scheduled, and here's what happened. I was scheduled to graduate in 67. Now I've done my master's. I was scheduled to graduate in June, I thought. They said that I didn't take English proficiency, so I had to go to summer school. So John Coltrane died July 17, and I didn't finish my master's completed until August. So when I did finish that, I just missed, I didn't go to his funeral or anything, but that was how close I had come to playing with him. But when I was in New York in 64, the night that I heard him play, he played so much he just fell down to his knees. And I actually had the privilege of taking his tenor saxophone and walking him to his station wagon in 64. And he was very soft-spoken, real kind guy. But he remembered me from when he was in Chicago playing the soprano at McKee's. So that was that. So that's bringing us up to 66, and I got my master's, 67. So then when I first came to New York, I went to Canada supposed to be for 2 weeks with Mazette Watts. We were held over there for 6 weeks. Every time we did a 2 weeks, he was there another 2 weeks. So when I got back, it was like July, August, September. It was around October. That's when I really got hooked up and started to play with Rossan and Roland Kirk. And I did my first recording with Rossan, Roland Kirk in November of '67. That's the record, Inflated Tear. I remember it so clearly because it was a very snowy day, lots of snow, and we did it at Webster Hall. And I think we recorded about 2 or 3 days, but that was my first professional recording with Rossan, and went on and on and on after that. And I think it's enough. I'm pretty much done about an hour. If there are any questions, we can kind of. You have any questions?
When you were recording, did you ever go to Rudy Van Gelder's studio? Or?
Yes, I recorded many albums there with different artists. Oh man, I recorded with Abdul Ibrahim a lot there. I recorded with the Blue Note. All the Blue Note records were recorded there. All the Blue Notes there, and yeah. Oh, I recorded there with George Benson. I recorded there with Jack McDuff, and just name it. I mean, like, just almost all of those records. The CTI that I was on with Leon Thomas, and any of those records that are, you know.
They're still using their.
They still use.
It's not just a museum.
It's still using it. Okay, a guy and his wife is a trumpet player. His wife, they're both there. They were helping Rudy while he was still there. So yeah, they still use it. And his building was made. His recording studio was made out of all wood. When you recorded in Rudy Van Gelder's, he came out to handle the mic with gloves on. His thing, don't touch my mics, don't touch my mics, don't touch my mics. And he came out with gloves and he moved his mic. And you better not touch it, because he didn't do mix. He didn't have to mix. He mixed it while you recorded. He recorded to a point that he didn't want anything changed or anything. And you know, one thing, I played with Charles Mingus, that was 71. So we going up to, getting to the 70s. I got married in 68. And doing 68 and 60, that was 68, then 69. I went to Ronnie Scott. We were in Ronnie Scott for a whole month in 1969, right? So December of 1969, I brought the new year in 70, went to in 70. Then I had just gotten married in 68. My former wife, God rest her soul, she's deceased now. She came over and we did a honeymoon. And the honeymoon was Paris, Madrid, and Casablanca. So, but the time I finished the tour, or the month with Rossan, he went to Oslo, and he went to a lot of the Scandinavian countries, and he didn't take the trombone. So, but I just happened to be in Paris at the time with my former wife, and he'd come through Paris, and you can hear that on the internet. I sent a clip of that out on the internet. It's called Paris Jams Roland Kirk 1970. But also I met the Art Ensemble of Chicago. They had a residency there. And they were living in Paris and playing in a particular theater. And I got pictures and everything. So when they did the 50th anniversary of the Art Ensemble of Chicago, I was invited to do that in Chicago. That's a couple of years ago. Any other questions?
Steve Lacy lived in Paris too.
Huh?
Steve Lacy?
Yes, he still lives in Paris to the day. Steve Lacy went over there, and right after he was playing with Chico Hamilton, because that's when I played with Chico Hamilton at Slugs, and you know. No. I'm talking about Steve or another Steve. That's Steve Lacy, but he had the group that Steve played in. What's his name? Not Steve Furtado. Now Steve Furtado was a trumpet player.
He played with Gil Evans a lot.
Yeah, but with Steve Lacy, he's a soprano player, but this alto player, because he went over around the same time he played. Who was the alto player that played with Steve Lacy band? You remember? His name was Steve Potts. Steve Potts. Yeah, Steve Potts. Steve Potts was the alto player, but Lacy was the soprano player. Yeah, he was over there during that time too, because Steve Lacy had his group, you know, and his thing was he played a lot of the monk stuff. He played all the Thelonious Monk. Thelonious Monk was my personal friend for 5 years because we played from around 71 or 72 at the Vanguard, the Village Vanguard. Every time we played, I played with Rosson Roland Kirk at the Vanguard. They would have two bills. They would have Thelonious Monk and Rosson Roland Kirk. So Thelonious and I spent a lot of time in the kitchen, because there was no dressing room, in the kitchen of the Vanguard. And I got to, after a while, you know, he opened up. He was very straight up, and he would come over to me and he would say, yeah, you know, when you make a record, you got to make sure that you make a good record, because it's going to be here longer than you. He said, make another one. Making a record is like writing a book. Each cut on the record should be like a chapter in a book. He had a lot of things to say, but he wouldn't say a lot. Just one-liners. And he paced up and down the floor. Also, that's a thing that I have to tell you about that. When I did this, he stopped. He said, say that again. I played it, and then he would grit his teeth, you know. And then when guys come in, he would throw his arm out like this, and I'd say, and he'd say, check that out. And we had this routine. I can say I played with him, but not on the bandstand. You know, we had this routine. But Thelonious, that was a great relationship. Yeah. And Jimmy Garrison. Jimmy Garrison was another personal friend of mine, because he used to come to hear us play with Rosson Roland Kirk all the time. And you know, some guys you just be good friends with, you know. McCoy was like that. McCoy, he was on the road all the time, but when he came over, he had a family. He was a family man. So he would take his wife shopping at this dress store or across from where I played tennis in Teaneck. I lived in Teaneck, and I you know, coming from the tennis court, I see McCoy he would be across the street. He wouldn't go in the tennis in the show. He would let his wife do whatever they had to do. He'd be standing on the corner, and we just sat there and talked and everything, you know. He had a way of laugh. You know, he was very unique in his laugh, you know. But we would stand there and just talk about life and about family and stuff. Yeah. I got so much more. I got about 2 or 3 more days. But is there any more questions? Any more questions? Yeah. Okay. Let me see. if somebody asked me what was the highlight of my up to this point cruise, okay, one was 5 years of playing with Abdul Ibrahim. I really was there. I wrote a piece for symphony orchestra in 1980 that was performed. It was a 50-piece orchestra, and the people that were there that played was Hilton Ruiz, Freddie Wakes, Bob Cunningham. All of them are deceased now. I really, really want to get that piece performed again before I leave. Performing with Marvin Gaye. He was one of the best band leaders I've ever worked for. Each night when he finished his show, he would come down, shake your hand, and look at you in the eye. Because it's very important to look persons in the eye. You can tell who they are, what they are, or whether they like you, or whether. Look at them in the eye, and he would say, "Man, thank you so much for playing. You guys really helped me." And that was the time when he had women throwing their underwears at him and stuff, you know. But he would come down, and the thing that he did, whatever conversation we was in, he would not miss anything. He was just like we had just stopped talking 2 hours ago. He was engaged. He was, you know, really. And Freddie Wakes, my friend, in the first grade, Freddie taught him a lot on drums because Marvin could play the piano, could play the drums. He was a real musician and that could sing. He was a musician as equally as a singer. And the other one is Charles Mingus. Mingus would call me every night at 2 a.m. and talk to about 5 a.m. And we would do it nightly. Because I still don't sleep long periods of time. I sleep 3 hours at the time, and that's it. Sometimes I can get away with just the 3 hours. But lately, I've gotten me a CPAP machine that allows me to really sleep better and deeper. So that was a blessing. And to play with all the greats. James Brown was another one exciting to play with, and always, it was something about playing with him. He was such a energetic guy, and all the people I played with at the Apollo Theater, Dionne Warwick, Nancy Wilson, Ella Fitzgerald. I played with her for 2 weeks. And the Basie Band, Thad Jones, Mal Lewis, Count Basie, Lionel Hampton, Cab Calloway. Oh man, it goes on and on. But that's some of the things that stands out in my mind. Playing with these really giants. Slam Stewart. I got his autograph. I got a chance to play. Now, he goes back to Coleman Hawkins. He played on Coleman Hawkins' Body and Soul. See, I got a chance to see Coleman Hawkins at the last part of his life. You know, he used to play at the Vanguard. I knew all the guys in his band, Coleman Hawkins. So I didn't ever get to see Charlie Parker, but I got a very close glimpse with some people that played with Charlie. And I played with Max Roach. I didn't ever play with Max. Max was the one who commissioned me to write 2-string quartets after he had heard the piece that I wrote for the symphony orchestra. And Max would be on the plane, because we travel a lot and things, and he would be listening to cassettes back in those days. He would take the cassette out of his, and we were on the plane, and he'd hold it up, show me that he was listening to it. And when he got a MacArthur's grant, he commissioned me to write 2-string quartets. I have yet to record them, but I'm going to. And we were good friends. He really, really, you know, liked me. And then he was into art too, you know. Elizabeth Catlett. They knew each other. You know, they were kind of the same area. And I'm an artist. So that goes into another whole thing with Ed Clark and the art people that I know. So I'm just blessed to have been there with the real people, the giants, you know. Thank you. And I'm 75 and I still can walk and I still can get up and feed myself. So, you know, the questions, I mean, I guess we just have to...
How was Mingus? What kind of...
Mingus. Okay, Mingus was... when I first got in band, Mingus didn't like me for two reasons. First of all, he said he thought that I played on one song, or the song for the Center Lady, whatever the song was. But he said, so then I sent a sub, or somebody sub to me, and he didn't play, he played on my level, didn't play as well as me. So one night we're in the Vanguard, I tell you this, has got to be true. So we've been in the Vanguard, we're playing blues in F, you know, like you remember when we were doing it, and everybody had a solo. So he put around, and then when it came to my solo, we played in F, in key of F. Then he went to key of B, didn't bother me. Went to key of F sharp, didn't bother me. But everybody he did that to, they started looking at the horn, what's going on and everything. So he called me up that night. And my former wife, God rest her soul, was gone. He said, here's the phone for you. It was like 2 a.m. I figured, Dick Griffin, this is Charles Mingus. I owe you an apology. See? I said, well, now, what, Mingus, what's the apology? I was mad at you. You were the only one that impressed me tonight. Do you need a draw? That means, do you need some money? Because that's a compliment when guys get, I said, no. He said, man, I was mad at you, and I said, I'm going to tell you why. He said, when you got in the band, you soloed on Black Saint and the Center Lady, and I didn't think you knew what you were doing. I said, okay. Then he said, when you send in your sub, you send in somebody that didn't play as well as you. Don't ever do that again. He said, you should send in Garnett Brown, somebody that plays better than you. And he was right. And I didn't never do that after that. Every time I couldn't be in, I would send somebody else that played better than me. And he said that impressed the band leader better than send somebody in weaker than you because you think you're going to take your job. And then after that, Mingus would dial me clockwise, 2 o'clock in the morning. And the thing that he did, the way I write songs. Every song that I write is a story. It's like a soap opera. And we both talked about that. I wrote this song called Madrid. And I wrote it. I have the romantic part. I have the bullfight part in it. And he did the same thing for his Tijuana thing. And see, he writes everything. So, see, another one is the fisherman wife is a bunch of damn bad slippers. And he told me the story about that. Because the essence of that, jive ass slippers, that's what he said. The fisherman wife is a bunch of jive ass slippers. The story was that when the fisherman goes fishing, her lover would come and she would meet him at the door in a robe in her slippers. That's what that was all about. And you hear the piece, it really doesn't even sound like anything like that because it's such a classical piece, but he told me. And every song he wrote was that. Okay, think about all the political things. Oh Lord, you know, all of that was all about the civil rights movements and everything. So he wrote it just like I write. Every song is a story. This one is For the Love of My Life, I think it is. Da 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 da. Yeah, For the Love of My Life. And it's all about, the front part of it is, a guy meets a woman, a lady or whatever, and then, I didn't even put up the right pictures. I have some more pictures I got to show you of me and there's a wedding. So the whole song is, you know, you meet somebody and it's for the love of my life. Then this was the wedding part. So that's it. All of my songs got a story like that behind them. But that's the thing that Charles Mingus and I had in common. So I got to show you the other pieces up here, and then we can definitely call it. But that's me at 1 year old. And then this is me at 2 years old. That's me and my cousin Jean. And then this is me at 17. This is my sister's, one of my sisters just passed, and the middle one, Bet. This one here, on the next to me. And that one's my sister Bet. She passed in February. And this is my cousin Jean. The one at the top is my cousin Jean, and she's been dead about 20 years now. The one in the middle, in the front, that's my youngest sister, Minnie. That she wasn't born when my mother, her father died. And the one Shirley on the right is my oldest sister. and she lives in Cleveland, and she's 82 years old now. I think I got one more. Yeah, that covers it. My mother at 18, me at 1 and 2. So those are all, but I had some more that I couldn't bring up. So that's about it. I think I've covered it. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon. I enjoyed